All right. Well, welcome to all of you that are joining 30 minutes later than the scheduled time. It is greatly appreciated. Just as a disclaimer, um, I could not get the camera to work. Um, my good friend who's traveling, Stephen, he's actually watching right now. And as others jump on, yeah, Stephen, bro, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the camera to show up on as a video option. So even Leah said, "Well, let me see if I can help you," and she couldn't. So we have to come back to the old computer, which is not the preferred method. So Stephen, if you get some time today, kind of walk me through how to do that because we would like to have Leah on again with other questions, and we wanted to have a nice, clear camera shot. Um,
Sorry.
so yeah, I do apologize. So, but speaking of Leah, Leah is here with us. Thank you for your
Yeah.
flexibility today. um, so yeah, so listen, we're going to get started. It's 10:30. I know we're on Facebook, so thank you all that are joining on Facebook and those that are joining on YouTube as well. Um, and yeah, we're just roughing it. We yeah, and I guess for me, um, I guess this speaks to kind of how things are in my world right now. Kind of a little scattered, a little here and there, but we're still pushing through
Yeah.
type. So, but yeah, listen, I want to get right to this. I'm very appreciative of Leah. So I'll just give a little background of how I know Leah. And then we'll kind of just let her get some background about who she is. And then we'll get into some questions that I kind of sent her beforehand. But I actually know Leah from her family. So her dad, and she'll probably dig into this, is Pastor Doug Ford. And growing up as a kid, um, Pastor Doug was like, I mean, he's still very known in Marion, but we used to go to this camp called RFKC, or Royal Family Kids Camp. And the church, the name was changed, it's Centerpoint now,
Yeah.
but before it was called
Abundant life.
Abundant Life.
Yep.
And they were and still are a massive champion in this camp. But Pastor Doug Ford was like the pastor that championed this camp. Me and my sisters went 4 years in a row,
Mm-hmm.
and Pastor made his appearance, always made us laugh. Absolute funny guy, and still is. Like he's just funny. He's just But with that, that's how I learned the Ford family. And then we shared the stage together. I think the one show we did together was Hairspray,
Yeah.
um, where he was,
He was the mom.
he was the mom on that
Yeah,
show.
he was.
But by default of that, I got to know Bev, which is Leah's mom, Doug's wife, um, her sister, and all that. So that's how I knew Leah, just by nature of her family. And then seeing her in passing, I think, are you still part time at?
No, when I did my photography business, I
There it
was.
is. Okay, so she did have a short stint at Coffee and Crumb. So I seen her, I was like, "Hey, Leah," she's like, "Hey, Brian." It's like, "Yeah, working. What do you want to eat?" But through that, she kind of went from there to now doing ministry, and she's always been doing ministry, but now it's kind of in a bigger way along with the photography business. So, just a little background of how I know Leah and her family, and she has some phenomenal sons. Both are graduated now.
Almost. We got one more senior.
Yeah, one more. That's a senior.
One more,
That's
yeah.
right. Very musical family. She'll dig into that. So, but yeah, super, super excited that she's on with me today. And for these next 30 minutes, really just to share her heart and to kind of answer some not tough questions, but questions that I think is relevant to our generation. So, but before we do that, Leah, give some background on who you are, kind of you
Yep.
and all that. So,
Sure. So, my name is Leah. I have been in Marion since I was in fourth grade, so it's been a while. I am married, actually, almost 22 years next week to my husband,
very nice.
and have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. Doesn't seem possible, but it is. My oldest is will be a junior at Mount Vernon Nazarene University. He's majoring in communications and music, and
Nice.
yep, all that's good stuff. And then my youngest will be a senior at Harding. He's in marching band and show choir, like you said, very musical, kids, and I love that. Um, so I started off by being a teacher. I went to school, Ohio State, and to Mount Vernon Nazarene University for education. Got
Wow.
my master's degree, taught for 7 years. Every year, well, and at the same time while I was doing that, I was also full time worship leading. So I
Okay.
would be the every Sunday leader of all the things, scheduling, leading, picking songs, keys, all that stuff. And I can recall a conversation before I got my master's with my dad. And I said, should I go get my master's in education, or should I pursue like a degree in like worship ministry, pastoring? And at that point, just because of money purposes, and I had kids and young family, they were like, you should probably go get your degree, finish your degree in education, and get some dollars in
It's
the
a little
bank
more
account.
secure here.
Yeah, so I did. I went, and then I taught for 7 years. And every year, at the very end of the year, you had to make an assessment as to whether you were coming back, if you wanted to stay in the position, switch buildings, all the things. And I would reflect at the end of every year. And it wasn't that I was disgruntled; it just was an unsettled, like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
yeah, so at it would have been COVID 2020, COVID hit. So then it would have been the November. I was blessed with a COVID vacation where if you sit next to somebody who didn't have a mask, you had to be locked away for 2 weeks, that whole bit. So I did. I was forced into this 2 weeks. And so I was angry. I was so upset. And I sat at my keyboard and I started to play. And it was like the Lord was like, you can be bitter or you can get better. Figure it out.
Come on.
Because I was nasty.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, fine. That's annoying, but sure, I'll do what you need me to do. So my family, they got to go to school and to work every day. And so I decided I was going to lock myself in my prayer closet, which is the first time I've ever done it in my life.
Wow.
And so they would leave and I would do that. And it was in the 2 week time that I knew my time in the classroom was done, but I didn't know exactly what he was calling me to. So I put in my resignation, and at the end of that school year left education, and stepped into really a big step of faith, because I was giving up a full salary, as my oldest would have been a senior at that time.
Wow.
And my youngest was getting ready to need a car. And I was like, Lord, you're going to have to do it, because I don't know how we can do that. And so I left education. And at that point, I had been at Centerpoint for a year and back in that position.
Okay.
There's a little transitional piece where I stepped away for 5 years, went to another place, and
Sure.
came back. And so I kind of just was working for Jesus, doing full-time worship ministry gig there, and felt like I needed to go get my credentialing. So I did the certified level. I'm Assemblies of God is the kind of
Okay.
denomination.
Okay.
So with the AG, the national office has 3 levels of credentialing. It's certified, licensed, and then ordained.
Gotcha.
So I just finished actually the license level, and only have 7 classes left to ordination.
Come on.
So I am now officially a reverend, a pastor.
Very good.
And I do the worship and media there. And then I also started last year a photography business called Journey Photography. So that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Man. Well, I did not know. I guess the part of the process of how it works with the Assemblies of God. And I didn't know there were 3 parts. I knew that you were licensed because I think I seen your Facebook post. And I was like, yeah. So kudos to you. I mean, you're talking about stepping out on faith. And kudos, because I as a parent, but more important for you as a parent, your life was stepping into being in their senior year. Like you say, God, if this is
You got to make it happen.
You got to make sure you're moving expeditiously here.
Yeah.
And I think he's done that. And
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, you got kiddos that are now growing into fine young men, and it's fitting that the music piece followed you, because I see them for show choirs and all bands, and so kudos to that.
Yeah.
And that's good. And I guess that's part of the reason why we have her on, just so you guys know, is that background. And I didn't know you were a teacher either.
Yeah.
I had no idea you were a teacher. But speaking to how do you facing life, especially in our generation, as where there's 18, now it's like 39, 40-year-olds, that gap of folks, talking about faith and talking about stepping out and doing different level of things, and then depending on God to do that. So shout out to you and shout out to the support system I'm sure that you had along the way. So,
For sure.
but yeah, so in that, I want to transition and really capitalize on our time about these next 20 minutes to really dig into some questions and get your heart on it, get your feedback on it, and really to inspire those that are watching now. Most will watch later because it's a 10 a.m. deal, and most will watch later. But just really 10 questions that was laid on my heart as it relates to our generation. So the first question would be, how do you think the message of Christ applies to our modern generation? And that's Gen X, Gen Z, but in a modern time, how does the message of Christ apply to us?
Yeah, so I've spent some time processing these questions, and honestly, some of them stopped me for quite a bit. So
Okay.
I think that as we progress through, my answer to this question will probably unfold a little bit more than I give at this moment. But the first thing when I read the question was, okay, so he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So what was good for Moses is good for me.
Come on.
So like I was
Come
like,
on.
that was the first thing that
Starting
came to
off
mind. So I'm thinking, I mean, if he's never changing and it was good back then, he's got to be good for me today. He's got to be good for these 18, 19-year-olds who are struggling, right?
That's good already.
So then I'm looking in Hebrews and it says the word of God is living and active. It discerns the thoughts and intentions of the hearts. So I'm thinking what I've read today, I could read 3 months from now and it impacts me differently because it's not that the word is ever changing, but as I allow the Holy Spirit to work in and through me, new revelations come every time I read.
Come on.
So that's kind of my just kind of little opener leading into the next question. So that's what I'm thinking.
Man. So this to capitalize on this, just do small recaps on these questions or her answers. So you say, well, how does she answer that? Because God never changed. It applies to our generation because He doesn't change from generation to generation.
Oh.
That's powerful. All right, second question. What do you think then with that are the biggest challenges facing young Christians today?
That's such a loaded question. I mean, and I think that because I'm raising young adults, right, 17 and 20, I've seen it differently than when I was in school, when we were, back in the day, and just
Yeah.
I feel like today these kids are so searching for truth, and theology for this generation is ever changing because it shifts it shifts with their beliefs, it shifts with what they think is true and real. Perception becomes reality. They kind of pick and choose pieces of every kind of little thing and create their own version of it. And so I'm thinking that one of the biggest challenges is, one, if you're not in the word, you're going to struggle.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? You're going to struggle because you're going to sway back and forth between the influence of those around you. And if you don't know what is true, then what someone else tells you, you can say, well, oh man, that sounds really good. That must be truth. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for young Christians today, is to know what you know and not to be swayed by anyone else telling you that there's something other than that truth.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, there's truth and then there's truth. And what I mean by that is there's the truth that we know to be the absolute truth, the word of God.
Right.
But then there's also a truth that people perceive as their own perceptions.
Correct.
Or
Yeah.
believe based on their perceptions. So 100%, and that's a powerful answer. Biggest challenge, yeah, finding the true truth. I mean, it's a play on words, but yeah, and I would have to say that I've seen that across Christians alike, that we can take a simple truth and complicate it because our interpretation of that
absolutely.
truth is different.
Well, and I think too that a lot of people, and I don't want to, this sounds really bad, but like claiming to be Christians,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we take the word and we pick one little snippet of it and we forget that it's part of a whole section.
That's so good.
And so we take one little piece and we're like, oh, this is the piece for me, but we don't look before and after. And so then that is our truth, when in reality, is it really what it's saying, or are you missing the whole point? So I think that even that is a little bit of a scary position to be in.
Man, that's powerful.
So
yeah, it's part of the whole role. Don't just pick off the crumbs. That's convenient for you.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
All right, I like the way this is going. All right, so next question. With that in mind, how can young Christians effectively share the message of Christ with those that they are around, their peer group?
Yep. So I every day my kiddos would head to school from when they were young all the way through graduation. I would say, live big, shine bright. So
Ooh,
live
okay.
big, shine bright. That's the motto that we would do, and I give them the "I love you" symbol because it's not cool to say it out loud, and so they can hide it
Especially with the boys
as they're
that you
leaving.
have.
I know, right? So in saying "live big, shine bright," I'm saying to them, "Hey, we don't have to cram Jesus down anyone's throat because if they're not asking for it, they don't want it."
Come on. Yeah.
So we've
Yeah.
got to make sure that we're living in such a way that is not confusing to other people. So
Right.
if we watch what we're saying, what we're doing, what we're listening to, and that's reflective of Christ, and we may look like weirdos, we may be a little bit different, right? Because, well, why aren't you saying what I'm saying? Why aren't you doing what I'm doing? But if we kind of gray that, we kind of blur the line, and we start to sound like our peers, what representation of Jesus are we
Come
offering?
on, Leah. Come
So
on.
I think that in effectively sharing the message, we have to they have to be different in what they watch, what they listen to, how they speak, and that alone, without saying Jesus, is going to speak Jesus. Does that make sense?
Man, just in case, because these are nuggets, and just so you guys know, this is raw material.
Yeah.
No, this like I said, we started a little late, so this is fresh off the cuff. So this is the first time I'm hearing this. But what she just said was more than you saying it, show it. The biggest display of a Christ-filled lifestyle is actually having a Christ-filled lifestyle, not lip service.
Yeah.
Right? And put that on the backdrop of the way she answered the second question. Like, how are we effective? Or I mean, what's our biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is that truth, or what is known to be a truth. You can actually move that from being a challenge to actually a opportunity by just living what you know to be true, right? So, and again, I'm usually not a loss for words because I do this, but these are off the cuff. And to me, I'm gonna take that nugget, right? Um, don't talk about it, just be about it, especially in your peer groups. And that can go for old or young alike. That because he's the same yesterday and today forevermore, his truth doesn't change. So therefore, you can just walk it out.
Now I think there comes a point where you do need to speak it.
Okay.
But with these young kids, it becomes a challenge because, well, what do you say? What if I say XYZ and it goes against how someone's living, then they're going to classify me as boom.
That's good.
So you have to be in, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but you have to be in relationship that is a trust building relationship in order to be able to speak into someone's life. Otherwise, it's going to be like throwing your pearls before swine, right?
God.
They're not going to pick it up and take it because they're not asking for it. So if you live in such a way and then you build that relationship, that maybe one day there's a question asked, or maybe one day they're like, why do you do that? And then boom, open door. And then you are in relationship enough to know how they can handle and receive what you have to say.
Oh man, that's good. That's good. Hey, let's keep chopping away at this. This is good. Question 4. In what ways do you see the teachings of Christ influencing social media and the cultural issues that we're dealing with in our time?
Okay, so this one stumped me for a bit. I'm not gonna lie. So I had to think about this one. So Jesus did not stay inside of a little comfort zone box, right? He did things in my mind that pushed the envelope a little bit with the people who are watching around.
100%.
So he ate with sinners and tax collectors, right? He said to Zacchaeus, "Come down from that tree. I'm going to go to your house today." And everyone's whispering, "Wait, what? He's going to go to that sinner? I can't believe. How is he going to break bread with that man?" You know. And so then you've got the Samaritan woman. And 1, it's a woman. 2, it's a Samaritan. And yet he stops and says, "Hey, let me have a drink of water. And while I'm at it, I'm going to tell you your business."
Come on.
So he steps outside of this box where the disciples are going, "You spoke to her what?" Right? So, and then she goes back and says, "Hey, this man told me everything. You got to hear." They come back, they hear for themselves, and now everyone has changed. So I think too, when I was thinking about like this cultural issues of our time, I went to the Beatitudes.
Okay.
And so I was when I was reading through, I've got it in here in the Message version. So it talks about blessed when you're at the end of your rope. How many people are there?
Sheesh.
You know, that I mean, culturally speaking, things are expensive. People are at the end of the rope. They're depressed. They're like, life is not as easy as it once was. So culturally speaking, he's saying, "Hey, blessed are you when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God in his role. Blessed when you feel lost, when you've lost what is dear to you, Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're
Yeah.
blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. How much striving is there today?
My God.
You know, striving and trying to get that next big thing. I think that's a huge challenge for this generation right now. When things don't work, they quit. They quit.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'll find something bigger and better. If it doesn't happen as easily as they want, they think it's a failure, it's a flop, instead of persevering and pushing through and having patience. Um, let's see what else it says. Blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink, the best meal you'll ever eat. A lot of times we're hungry and thirsting for things that are not going to fill, you know. And so getting back to the basics of you're all I want, you're all I need.
Yeah, it's so good.
And it's so difficult
That's
because
so
it's
good.
so noisy. The world around us is so noisy.
Yeah,
So
so good.
if we're talking about social media, we're talking about cultural issues. Like social media is noisy. You can and talking about truth, like everyone wants to throw their little nugget piece out there,
Right.
and you got to be able to decipher whether it's reality or it's not. Um, let's see, what else does it say here? Um, Blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. Yikes.
That's good.
Don't be divisive. Don't be contentious. Blessed when your commitment to God, and this is, I think, the piece that stood out for me. Blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you deeper into God's kingdom. I mean, in the last days, what does it say? We're going to be pressed on every side,
Yep.
and we're going to be challenged, and we're not going to be liked for it. So
We do this thing where when somebody drops some nuggets, we do this little
chef's kiss.
so we say, chef's kiss. We now say teach us.
Oh, okay.
So just know, because I might go back and edit when I'm just put that there. That was a teaching moment, right? The Beatitudes. I think that's been a lost thing in the modern day church. They don't talk about it enough or at all. And the fact that you took the Beatitudes and literally made it relevant, that's powerful. That's a student of the word. I'm telling you, that's a teaching moment. That's good. All right. 7 minutes, we're good. We're good on time. How can we strive to live out the teachings of Christ in a world that is increasingly secular and materialistic?
Yep. So I went to Matthew, and this is the Message version again, just because I don't generally actually NLT is my go-to.
Okay.
But when I was trying to think about relating to the generation that you're talking about, sometimes the Message just puts it in such a way that's like, oh my word, okay. So it says, "Let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of the earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? If you've lost your usefulness, you will end up in the garbage."
Come on.
Here's another way to put it. It says, "You're to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. You're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill.
Sheesh.
If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket. I'm going to put you on a light stand. Now that I've put you on a hill, shine." And that goes back to the live big, shine bright. In a world that is ever increasingly secular and materialistic, we cannot lose our saltiness and we cannot be dim.
Come on.
And so, again, I just think it all goes back to the very beginning. If you don't know your truth, what are you standing on? And if you're wavering in any way, shape, or form, your saltiness is going to probably lose its flavor a little bit,
Come on.
and you're probably going to be a little dim because you're just not confident in it. And that doesn't mean that you're always going to be confident in it. I think that it's a process. And as you get deeper in your relationship with Christ, then I think that it just continues to cultivate and get easier and easier as you go.
Live big, shine bright.
That's it.
Listen, that's about to be. I may even do a hashtag after this. Was live big, shine bright. And if you don't know what I was talking about, you're watching this later or you'll see it. Hashtag that. Live big, shine bright. All right, let's keep moving. This is good. Number 6. What advice do you give or would you give to young people or for young Christians who are struggling to find their faith in today's world?
I mean, I've said it repeatedly. And so I think some very simple things. If you're not plugged into a church, into a Bible believing church, That's your first problem.
There you go.
So it says to not forsake the gathering of, to be around like minded people, starting your week off on a Sunday in a place where you are with people who are of the same mind, gathering in faith and getting out there. That's got to be number one. Two, get in your word daily. And if you're like, I don't know where to start, Google. Like, go to Genesis, but I would say start with Jesus. So go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Learn about Jesus. Learn about the man and be curious about it and start digging and finding some answers, right? And then praying. I always like to. I say journaling. A lot of people. I think young people struggle with this concept of prayer. I think they feel like it's so foreign,
Yeah.
and it's really not. It's very simplistic. It's as simple as a conversation we're having today. But if it's not been modeled, if it's not been something that you're just used to, get out a pen and paper and start writing your thoughts. And as you write your thoughts, it almost becomes a prayer, and you don't even realize that you're communicating in just a different form. And then it becomes a lot easier, I think, to then verbalize. You don't want to keep it trapped in here. And the mind is the devil's playground. So you don't want to keep it trapped in there. You want to verbally say and believe. But if it's easier, start journaling. Um, I heard a quote once that said, "You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So my encouragement is to choose wisely. It doesn't mean letting go of every relationship that's not Bible aligned, that's not God believing, right? But make sure that the 5 most closest people that you share the most time with are encouraging you in your walk with the Lord. And then as you do that, the other relationships that maybe aren't, you're an influence of them and they're not
Yep.
pulling you down.
It's like a domino effect of that light being shot.
Yeah.
Like literally, like Leah, you got something started with that live big, shine bright. That is so catchy, but even outside of being catchy, it is so biblically accurate,
Mm-hmm.
right? First, you live big, live unashamed.
Yeah.
And in the living of that, you're shining
Yeah.
like a city on a hill. Man, that is, listen, she ain't got something started. Let's keep moving. We're good. We're good. We're so good on time. 4 more minutes.
Okay.
We'll get to the rest of these. This is so good. All right, number 7. How can we as individuals and as a society better embody or show the love and compassion that Christ preached?
All right, so this one stumped me too, and it should not have. So I did a little digging, looked at some different commentary things, and I thought, okay, what are the top go tos? Now this one's a little bit of a lengthy response, but I can try to whittle it down. So one, you got to be a good listener.
Yeah.
If you hearing and listening are two different things. We can sit here and have a conversation, and I can hear everything you're saying, but if I'm not listening, listening means to be fully present, right? To sit quietly, be willing to be quiet, and then to offer feedback, not just completely zoning out and hearing what they have to say, but not taking it in. I think that's one thing that Christ did really well. He
That's so
listened
good.
very well. Two, be empathetic. Sympathy and empathy are totally different. We don't need pity. We don't need a pity party. We need somebody who's going to look at us and go, you know what? I may not have walked in your shoes, but I understand where you're coming
Come
from,
on,
and I
Leah.
empathize with
That's
you.
it.
Be an advocate, a voice for the voiceless, and with that, be a volunteer. Volunteering for different things. I mean, there are so many different organizations here in Marion alone, Leap and Outreach, the
Yep.
Peanut Butter and Jelly Truck, that are very simple ways to just give your time. And I think
True.
a lot of people want to write a check because it's easy. Let me give you my money.
Say
But
that-
listen, yeah,
Say that again.
right? I mean, it's so
What
easy
if-
to be like, here's $25, but what about a half an hour of your time?
Come on.
So, like, be willing to. Jesus didn't cut checks; he spent time with people. So, when you're when you're spending time with people, you got to make sure that you're keeping confidentiality. Jesus didn't go and a lot of times he would say, no, don't go tell anybody.
Yes, he did.
He would say, don't go tell anybody, because he wasn't ready. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't ready to launch everything. But confidentiality is key. And if you're going to build a trusting relationship, you break that confidentiality, you're done for. And you just lost every ounce of respect that you possibly could have had because you're out talking to other people about it. Being a giver, again, of time, talent, and treasure. You got to give your time. You got to give your talent, the skills that the Lord's given you. Don't hide those. Use them for something and for his glory. And then also give some money. We can't just give the money, but we need to do that. Be kind. Kindness is free. It costs nothing. So be kind. Send an encouraging message to somebody. If someone comes across your mind, don't just say, I'm praying for you. Literally text them the prayer. Call them up. Maybe you know someone's heart off. Get them a pizza. Drop it off at their doorstep. You can deliver it, not even let them know that it's you. Just be kind.
Yeah.
Spend a little extra time in the checkout line asking your cashier how she's doing.
Come on.
Don't miss opportunities because we're in a hurry. And I think we're so busy all the time. And then the last thing I think is just be creative. Don't think outside the box. The Lord healed how many blind eyes, and he didn't do it the same every time.
Come on.
So
Wow,
ask
so
the
good.
Lord for some specific ways to represent him with people around you, because like I've said, not everyone's going to be open to receiving it. So you got to be creative and meeting people where they are,
Yeah.
being Jesus's hands and feet in a relevant way without cramming it down their throat. So then you build a relationship and then you can make an impact.
Oh my goodness. And I'm gonna go back through and hit those points when we kind of go back through the video. I'm gonna edit it and hit those points so you guys can capture those like 7 or 8 points of how we can embody. And those are practical ways. Those aren't something that you gotta think overly hard on. The one that stuck out with me was taking that little extra time with the cashier. Saying, "Hey, how's your day going?" While they're doing the scan. It's been a long day. Anything I pray for you about?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and they may say no. Most of the time, I'll say, "Yeah, my workday will end." And they're probably saying that jokingly,
Mm-hmm.
but take that literally. All right,
Yeah.
I can do that. I'll pray that God gives you strength to get through the rest of this workday.
Yep.
That's literally embodying the love of Christ in a way that you probably would do or can do every single day.
Yeah.
Man, that's powerful. All right, we're at time. I want to get to the last question. I want to jump to the last question and kind of wrap this up because I think it's a powerful question to end on. Um, and it is, what do you believe is the role of young Christians, young people, in shaping the future of the church and our society?
So I want to first encourage you with 1 Timothy 4:12. It says, "Let no one despise your youth.
There it is.
Be an example to the believers in word and conduct, what you say and what you do, what you listen to, what you see." It's so important. In love, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Model, model, model. Be an example. But it says you got to be in the word. You got to know what you're modeling.
That's it.
Jeremiah 1, "I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and I appointed you. Oh, sovereign Lord," I said, "I can't speak for you. I'm too young." Then this is what the Lord says: "Don't say I'm too young, for you must go wherever I send you and say whatever I tell you. And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you. I will protect you. I have spoken." And then the Lord reached out and touched my mouth and said, "Look, I have put my words in your mouth. Today I appoint you and stand." This is not just for this time, it's for you as well.
Come on.
And we can't be afraid of that. I think a lot of time young people view this notion of ministry and is like they have to be on the pulpit preaching. You don't. Some are called to preach and teach, and some are called to go. Not everybody is, but you can be in that whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a bus driver, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a garbage collector, it doesn't matter. Whatever lane you're in, allow the Lord to put his words in your mouth and to be a light in that realm, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then the person that stood out to me the most when I was thinking about this is David. David was overlooked because he was young, he was small, he was not the it thing. And a lot of times I think that we get in our own heads because of what someone else has said or what we've said about ourselves. And we have to have some Samuels in our lives who say, no, I want that one.
That's good.
And then
Yeah.
and then in doing so, step up, because David served in the field first.
Yes, he did.
He served in the field and then he made his way to the palace. So he was in the pasture and he worked his way up. And was he perfect? Mm-mm. That man messed up, right? He messed up, but that, I think it's a great example. And so I would say, if young people are listening, go read about the life of David, go to 1st, 2nd Samuel and look at the life of David. He was a man after God's own heart because he spent time with them. And so I think that young people, it's critical. And I think a lot of times we find that they hit 18 and they're never seen again.
Never seen it
Yeah. And so
yet.
we've got to impact young people in a different way too. And I know that goes back to one of the questions you talked about that we didn't get to, was the social media message and how we can portray God in a positive way.
Yeah.
Listen, kids are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Reels. They have 17 to 22 seconds. If you don't capture them in that short amount of time, you're done for. And so if you're giving them a teeny nugget and they're, wait, what is that? Then they're going to likely listen to it again. They're going to go to your channel. They're going to stroll through your other stuff. We have to be so relevant for these kids. We have to encourage them. We have to uplift them. We have to walk alongside them. and let them know that God has chosen you for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And you may not be on a big stage doing it, but whatever your stage looks like, do it.
Man. And I'm so glad you said, Wade, I think it was like question 8, or it was a question 8
Yeah.
about social media, because even what we're doing right now, we'll do what we got to do, kind of add some things to it. But even as a millennial myself, the generation under me, I mean, that'd be my kids, our kid, it is not so much what you're presenting, but how you're presenting it.
Mhm.
And it goes back to what Leah said in the very beginning as we wrap this up, because I love the way she started out the questions. God is unchanging, right? The message isn't changing. That means the truth doesn't change. But she also said this: how we shine that light may change,
Mhm.
right? Is he calling us to go on the hill, or is he calling us to go to that grocery store? Is he calling us to say that prayer for that attendant that, who knows? I mean, I love the theme that I'm going to use: live big. First, you have to live in the truth. And then when you live in that, you shine bright, unashamedly. You're not dimming your light, right? Because now you're cultivating change not only around you, but for the kingdom and the advancement of Christ. Oh, man. I cannot wait to go back and look at this and ask some stuff, because it's going to be so, so good. So, Leah, thank you. Next time, hopefully we can have a next time, do this again with a whole nother slate of questions. And we'll get a little more proper
right.
setup.
No
So,
problem. No problem.
for those that are watching and that will watch later, again, always thank you so much. And until next time, yeah, we appreciate Leah. Again, I will say this on the ending note: if you don't have a church home, or if you're trying to find somewhere to go here in Marion, Centerpoint Church. It is on Mount Vernon Avenue. I always like to say it's across the street from Menards,
Yes.
but it's before you get to Dayspring.
Correct.
So if you want more information about that, message
Got their
Leah,
website.
message me.
Yep.
They got a website, Centerpoint Church.
DiscoverCenterpoint.com.
There it is. So hit them up. Love you guys. Be blessed. And thank you so much for tuning in.